AMD's RX 7900 XT and XTX are launching in just a few days, and we'll be getting reviews soon. I've got a lot of other news to talk about today as well, but let's lead with this. We have the first Radeon RX 7900 XTX and 7900 XT 3D Mark Time Spy and Firestrike scores leaked to videocards.com. Now, they're claiming that this is based on synthetic data. I mean, this is, in other words, this is a synthetic benchmark. This is, so we need to be clear here, for those of you not familiar. 3D Mark is not a gaming benchmark. It's not an actual game. It's a benchmarking suite which is designed to test the performance of the GPUs, but is not an actual game. But this is based on synthetic data collected from and confirmed it with multiple reviewers. So we're going to have to take the videocards.com word for that, but they're saying that this is confirmed by multiple reviewers. Reviewers definitely have these and are reviewing them right now. If you're wondering if I have one and can confirm, I can confirm that I do not have one. I did finally get a hold of people at AMD who, could talk about review samples, but by that point it was too late to get one for a day one review here. Anyway, so what is the data? I don't know, I think some people are going to be disappointed by these results, but let's look at them, and let's also mention, again, this is not a gaming benchmark, so we have to see how these perform in games. But overall, what we're seeing is that if you compare the 7900 XTX with the RTX 4080, at the 4K Extreme preset in Time Spy, so Time Spy Extreme, it's actually losing to the 4080, and this is not a ray tracing benchmark. It's basically a tie, but it is slightly behind. Now, what seems really strange to me here is that the 7900 XT, not the XTX, but the XT version, is almost matching the performance of the XTX version. And that just seems wrong to me. If you look at the specs sheet of the 7900 XT versus the XTX, it seems significantly cut down. So you would absolutely not to expect them to be performing this close to each other, which is, I mean, it's just really strange. Now, if you look at the 1440p test, the 4080 actually pulls further ahead. And again, Now that could be expected. In other words, it's weird compared to last generation where we saw AMD have a bit more of an advantage the lower the resolution went, or you could look at it as falling further behind the higher the resolution went, the way that GPU architecture scaled. Now, maybe it's just different this time around, but I thought that was interesting to point out, where the XTX is basically tied with the 4080 at 4K, but falls the 4080 is about 10% faster at 1440p. Now, again, that's really strange. Now, if you look at the Firestrike benchmark, the results are a little bit different. Here we're seeing the 7900 XTX beating the 4080, and then the 7900 XT just barely slower than the 4080, and we're seeing a much wider separation between the 7900 XTX and the 7900 XT, which is more like what we would actually expect given the specs of these cards. So in other words, I think the Firestrike results here line up closer to what you might predict if you just looked at the specs and all of that. Now, also, this is interesting if you look at it compared to AMD's own 6950 XT, because in the 3D Mark Time Spy results, you see a different performance gap between the 7900 XTX versus the 6950 XT than you do here at on the Firestrike results. In the Firestrike results, the 7900 XTX is only 29% better than the 6950 XT, which is, again, very interesting. Now, neither of these are ray tracing tests. So a lot of people, I think, were expecting the 7900 XTX to have a more pronounced lead over the 4080 when we're not talking about ray tracing than what we're seeing here. Here we're seeing it losing in one test, winning in another. So hard to say exactly what to make of this other than, again, something seems wrong, at least with the Time Spy result, because 7900 XT and XTX should not, I think, be performing that close to each other, unless that's a hint at something some deeper issue actually with these GPUs or their drivers. AMD did make a lot of big changes to how the GPU works, and hopefully we're not seeing. This is a hint that in certain situations there's going to be some kind of weird bottleneck going on with the architecture. And again, this is not talking about the ray tracing performance. Now, speaking of the possible performance numbers, we do also have a Geekbench result that's been leaked. Now, in the Geekbench result, we see a couple of things. One is that depending on which thing, now again, I should also be clear for the people who aren't already familiar. Geekbench is also a synthetic benchmark. It's not an actual game. So you need to take it for what it is. Again, this might not actually line up to gaming performance. Now, it does test Vulkan performance, which is a gaming API, as well as OpenCL. And in Vulkan, we did see the 7900 XTX with about a 15% lead over the RTX 4080, but in OpenCL, it fell behind by a similar margin. So, again, hard to say what we can say from, what exactly we can make out of that. Other than we're going to get actual reviews soon. Hardware Lux has revealed that their results will be available on December 12th. In other words, the review embargo, at least for the AMD reference designs, is December 12th. They said they're not sure about the about when add-in board partner reviews will be available, because a lot of times with GPU launches, those are separated out. A lot of times it's the next day. So these cards will launch on the 13th. The reference model reviews look like they'll be out on the 12th, so the day before. So you will get a chance to actually see reviews before trying to frantically buy one, although probably not for the board partners. I would imagine those will probably be available on the 13th, because a lot of times it's the day after the reference model comes out. But again, that's just speculation. Now, could there be some kind of underlying issue here? And also, what will supply look like and everything like that? Well, Igor's lab has published this post saying initial difficulties with AMD's Radeon RX 7900 XTX and 7900 XT ? Board partners apparently with problems and delays. So what are the details? What are his sources? Well, he says that he has a lot of sources within the board partners, without the AIB partners, and that, he hears things from them. But again, that doesn't mean it's 100% accurate. It looks like he's saying some sources are speculating that only 10,000 reference cards for the EMEA region, so I think that's like the Europe and Eastern Asia and all of that, with 3,000 cards going for Germany, because I'm pretty sure Igor's lab is based in Germany, and then it says it's probably even more unclear for the board partner cards. So this is the 10,000 number for the reference cards. He's saying some of his sources in Hong Kong and Taiwan are still reporting driver and BIOS problems and delays in delivery. So basically, he's saying he's hearing a lot of issues about the supply and possibly even BIOS and driver problems, but as saying, always take this with a grain of salt. But he's saying that a large but non-exclusive AIB partner even doesn't see its cards as being available until in January after the new year. And another one was saying that they're supposed to start shipping only shortly before launch, so that an availability of about 1 week after launch should be expected. In other words, he's saying that a lot of the board partner cards might not be available on that December 12th launch date. But we don't know. Now, he's saying he's trusted the source for over 10 years, and he's also saying he would look at all benchmark results leaked so far with a lot of caution and possibly call them not optimal, because some things could already be refuted quite clearly days ago, quasi under the table. Now, I'm not quite sure what to make of this, if he's trying to imply that leaked benchmarks like what we're seeing here. His article came out before this leaked, by the way, so time-wise, that's not a response to that. And I'm not sure if he's saying refuted as in the real results will be better or will be, he's saying they're not optimal. I don't know. Interesting statement from Igor, but it's not clear enough exactly what he means, I think, to take anything firmly from it. I'm also seeing a videocards.com article talking a bit about, again, one thing they're mentioning is the Igor's lab report talking about the supply issues, but they're also quoting a couple of other sources from Chinese media outlets confirming that there's no made by AMD cards coming into China due to tension between Taiwan and China, all of that kind of stuff. So it's looking like, at least in the Chinese market, the made by AMD cards will be not there. And so the board partner cards would be our only option. And the supply on that sounds like it might be pretty limited. Now, we are seeing a whole bunch of the actual board partner designs either leaked or officially announced at this point. We're seeing some ASRock designs here, and this is a liquid-cooled model, which looks pretty interesting. I'm going to move pretty quick through these designs, though, because I want to get to some Nvidia information, which I think is pretty interesting. Here we're seeing XFX models coming in here with the Merc design. Looks pretty, especially the backplate looks pretty different than their previous generation model here. By the way, I link all my sources in the video description if you want to take a closer look at any of this. We're also seeing the Sapphire Nitro getting us pictures here. Now, videocards.com is putting their logo over this, so it looks like they probably got this ahead of when it was supposed to be available. Looks like an interesting design. I'm not sure, so I think depending on your build look, this is definitely stands out from just a generic kind of, just some other GPU kind of thing. Now, this one is talking about that we are getting the official AMD reference cards actually out for unboxing videos and reviews from a lot of channels. So you can see how the reference models compare size-wise versus a whole bunch of, the NVIDIA competition and all of that. They're definitely smaller than the 4080 and 4090. Anyway, let's get into some other really interesting news. How about the RTX 4070? And no, I'm not talking about the 4070 Ti, which is the unlaunched RTX 4080, but we're talking about the actual RTX 4070 non-Ti. So we're now seeing some rumors on this, and this is coming from our favorite Copite7 Kimmy. And he's saying some updates of RTX 4070. He's saying it's the PG141 SKU, 336, 337, AD104, 250A1, 5888 FP32, 12 gigabytes, 21 gigabit per second GDDR6X, 36 ML2, so 36 megabytes L2 cache, and a 250 watt TDP. So if you compare that to what we've seen from the 4070 Ti version, which again is our unlaunched RTX 4080, 12 gigabyte, so confusing, guys. Anyway, it's 35 watts less on the power draw, and it is significantly cut down in terms of the actual CUDA cores, right, with the 5888 CUDA cores. However, he's saying 12 gigabytes of memory. Previously, we had seen a rumor that the 4070 would be a 10 gigabyte graphics card with a 160-bit interface. But what we're seeing here is now a 12 gigabyte card with a 192-bit configuration, which would be an upgrade. Although we had seen rumors of over 7,000 CUDA cores, and this is only coming in at under 6,000. So videocards.com has helpfully taken this Copite tweet and lined it up in specs-wise against 4090 and 4080, which we know for sure. The 4070 Ti, which we pretty much know for sure, despite this not being official from NVIDIA. I'll get to this in a second, but the 4070 Ti is pretty much confirmed to just be the 4080 12 gigabyte that got unlaunched, which we knew all the specs for. So if you compare the 4070 against the 4070 Ti, we're seeing that they now have the same 12 gigabytes of memory and 192-bit bus and 21 gigabit per second, giving us the same 504 gigabyte per second bandwidth, but with 35 fewer watts. And then the, I think the biggest difference there then being the CUDA cores, coming in at 5888 compared to 7680. Now look at that, how it compares to the 4080 and then the 4090. I mean, we're looking at, like a third of the CUDA cores of the 4090, roughly. I'm doing that in my head, guys. Anyway. But how do we know about the 4070 Ti? Let's talk about that for a second. Well, actually, where did I have it? So what do we know about pricing, I guess is what I wanted to say. So the 4070 Ti, according to WCCF Tech, they say that it's being rumored or they're considering a pricing of $899 MSRP. Now, this would be really disappointing because, when they unlaunched the 4080 12GB, they admitted it was bad naming because it significantly underperforms the 4080 16GB, which is now the only 4080. So the naming it a 4080 would be misleading. But if you still price it at the $900 price, it still feels very overpriced. Now, they could still change this pricing. It's not set in stone at this point. But WCCF Tech is claiming that this is the number being currently thrown out to board partners by Nvidia to at least be making their initial estimates and all of that. Now, that might be wrong, but that's what they are claiming. So I don't know. We'll see. I would hate to see a 4070 Ti at $900. And then what does that mean for the actual, 4070? Now, how do we know the 4070 Ti is just the unlaunched 4080 12GB? Well, this has been rumored heavily. It just makes sense, but also Colorful accidentally seems to have basically confirmed it by posting their 4070 Ti, which isn't even officially announced by Nvidia, along with a specs sheet. And the specs sheet does show these specs, which match up to what we saw on the 4080 12GB. So if you try to actually go to their website, though, where this happened, let me see if it's up now, but when I checked last night, nah, they took it down, because that wasn't supposed to be up yet, okay? Was not supposed to be there. Okay, so that's what's going on with Nvidia, with the 4070 Ti and the 4070. Again, pricing to me is going to be the biggest question. And I bet that pricing is going to heavily depend on what kind of actual performance we end up getting from the AMD GPUs with the 7900 XT and XTX. But what the heck is going on with Intel? Well, Intel's Arc actually is making a huge step forward. Now, I have not had a chance to test this myself yet, but let's take a look at what Intel is claiming, and I did find at least one independent test confirming some of this. So remember that one of the big problems with Intel's Arc GPUs is that, while it can perform very well in a lot of modern graphics APIs, DirectX 12 and Vulkan, a lot of still popular but older games like Counter-Strike, CSGO, run on older graphics APIs like DX9. And Intel did not have the, decade or more of time to write custom DX9 drivers for all of these games that that AMD and Nvidia have. So they had major problems running a lot of these older games, especially Counter-Strike. Now, it's looking like they've made a massive improvement to their DirectX 9 performance. Now, they're claiming some big numbers here. They're saying that the average FPS in DX9 games are up to 1.8 times faster, so an 80% increase over their previous driver. Now, that's up to, so it's not saying that's happening in every game, but this is even better. The 99th percentile, also known as 1% lows, up to 2.3 times faster versus their previous driver. That means those stutters that you would feel, because it's one thing to just have bad overall performance, but if it's consistent, you can kind of get used to it. But if it stutters, especially in a game like CSGO, that can just be a loss right there. So if we take a look at this, they're claiming in Stellaris, StarCraft 2, CSGO, Guild Wars 2, Payday 2, League of Legends, and these are the 1080p results. They're claiming some pretty massive performance gains in a lot of these, although Guild Wars 2, not much, although it's an improvement. Payday 2, a little less impressive, but still an improvement. League of Legends, pretty noticeable here. But notice the CSGO result, from 177 up to 318. And then in 1440p, we're also seeing some large results here with Stellaris, StarCraft 2, CSGO. Again, Guild Wars 2 showing an improvement, but not major. Payday 2, same kind of deal. And again, League of Legends, big deal. So for these esports titles like StarCraft 2, CSGO, and League of Legends, this looks like a really big deal. Now, if you look at the frame time graph that they're publishing here, In CSGO, this is what we mean by the 1% lows. These spikes in frame time, that's how long it takes to render the next frame. If there's this spikiness, it means some frames are coming smoothly and then you might wait and you get this stuttery delay. It's horrible if you're trying to track your aim in a competitive game. You can see the light colored line here indicating significantly smoother frame times, although there are still some spikes. Compared to the older one, which is just all over the place like this. So this is massive improvements. Now, do we have any confirmation that this is true? Well, I did pull up a video. I was just looking if anybody had videos or articles about this. Random Gaming in HD, let me get my head out of the way. So Random Gaming in HD has a video on this. I'll link it in my description. I don't want to steal all the results, so I'm just going to show a CSGO screenshot right here. He tested multiple games. Please take a look at this video. But CSGO, he's comparing it versus his original test where he got a 201 average FPS and is now getting 486. The 1% lows went from 72 to 195, and the 0.1% lows went from 8, yeah, you saw that right, 8 to 154. This looks like a massive improvement, and please take a look at the Random Gaming in HD video if you want to see more results in other games, because it does look like CSGO, as reported by Intel, has got some special, that's the biggest performance jump that we're seeing here. So really, really cool to see this. And again, these are the 1% lows looking a whole heck of a lot better in a lot of these titles. But the question is, how did they do it? Did they actually write new DX9 drivers? And it looks like they have customized support in certain games. But if you look over here at Gaming on Linux, I found an interesting article saying that Intel is using DXVK. This is a DirectX to Vulkan translation layer, which is part of Steam Proton, and does support some Windows implementations. And this is, for example, what like the Steam Deck is relying on for a lot of how it actually works, right? So they're referring to the blog post from Intel. It's saying, also mentioning this, well, let me get it a little further. So they're saying that they talk about how they did a native implementation of DX9, and there will be times when games are running on our native DX implementation. Maybe that's happening in CSGO, I'm not sure. But it says there'll be other times when we take advantage of translation layers to go from DX9 to more modern API. Now, they had been relying on some kind of DirectX to DX12 conversion that didn't work very well. But it looks like what they're actually doing is using DXVK. And he says you'll only find that out when you look through their README to find the DXVK note and license. They say it works, that the way it works will be transparent to the end user, so they will likely just have a list of games where the driver switches between DXVK or their own work. So I found this really interesting. So basically they're just taking advantage of the fact that DXVK already exists and works well, so, I mean not perfectly, but well, and better than what Intel was currently doing. So they've just switched to that, and then are working on customizing specific games. Maybe that's what's going on with CSGO. I don't know. This is really good news for Intel, though. Very exciting stuff. And this is coming along with this new driver, which also has some other, gaming optimizations for some new games coming out and all of that. So anyway, kudos to Intel. Also, I hope if they do any custom work on the DXVK translation layer, that they make that public and help the overall build rather than just, keep it to themselves or whatever. I'm not sure how the rules work on all that, but you can see there's a whole bunch of issues fixed, but still some known issues and all of that if you look at what I was kind of scrolling through behind me here on the Intel driver, but the video's getting long. Let's move on. Speaking of new drivers, there is a new Nvidia driver out with optimizations for Portal RTX. Remember, I did test this out on a whole bunch of GPUs. It is available to you now. There are some minor changes in the release version, including the hotkeys that you use to actually open up the graphics menu in the RTX Remix. And I did post that in my video. If you take a look at that, there's a pinned comment and it's in the description. Anyway, the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Next Gen upgrade game ready driver. Those seem to be the big highlights here, but there's a number of other things in this post. Again, link will be in the description. Game ready for Jurassic World 2 as Evolution 2 as well. Now, we're seeing some new custom models for some Nvidia GPUs as well. We're seeing a, slide out of the way, to the other side here. We're seeing a white GeForce RTX 40 card coming from Zotac and AX Gaming. So if you're looking for a white build, perhaps this is what you're looking for. Zotac does these curved designs, which I guess some people like. I don't know, to me they look a little funky. But here's more of a squared off one here coming from AX Gaming. But again, a couple of white GPU options there for you. And also Colorful is launching a not very colorful, well, unless you call it, I guess white is a color. Maybe it contains all the colors, guys, so maybe this is colorful. Anyway, it's reportedly launching a new graphics card called iGame Lab, and this is apparently coming from overclocking.com originally, but I'm seeing reported here by videocards.com. And this model is based on the RTX 40 iGame Vulkan GPU, except the cooler shroud is now white. So, more white, although it looks like they're saying that this should become exclusive to Asian markets. So for many people watching the video, this doesn't really matter, so let's move on. We are seeing in CPU news, the Intel Core i9-13900KS, remember this is not released yet, is the faster version, the super binned and overclocked version of the 13900K that we're expecting to come out sometime in the next couple of months, most likely to try to retain the gaming crown as AMD might push into their X3D chips, all of that. Well, a benchmark has leaked out showing 5% faster in single-core performance and 10% faster in multi-threading versus the 13900K. This is their whole. Intel has claimed officially the 6 GHz out-of-the-box chip coming early next year. Now, these performance numbers are coming from Geekbench 5, so if you're curious what test this was in, there you have it. And the 13900KS is not officially confirmed, I think, by Intel, but we're all pretty sure that's what this is going to be called, and it would be consistent with their 12900K and KS. You can see it stacked up here against some other Geekbench results, and take a further look at this WCCF Tech article if you're interested. Now, in terms of some PC gaming announcements, some people will be interested to see that a previous PS5 exclusive game, Returnal, did have its official PC port announced during the Game Awards 2022. However, we had already seen leaked screenshots of a PC version of this game, so this should not be surprising anybody who is following this closely. And we're also finally seeing Baldur's Gate 3 getting an official launch. I know it's been available in early access mode, but an official launch in August of 2023. So that looks pretty interesting, and I think I've got to start getting my kids up and ready for school. I hope all of you have an excellent day.